Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Heavenly Sword. This game has been in the back of my mind for more than a decade at this point. I think my first introduction to this game was it had a TV commercial, and this really blew my mind at the time because this is the first time that I really experienced like a video game being advertised on normal TV. I know it's not the very first game ever to be advertised on TV, but it's the first game that stuck out to me. And the commercial was just so awesome. It's this girl with this long red hair going around killing a bunch of guys with this sword and doing all these flips and stuff. I was always intrigued by that commercial, but unfortunately I didn't have a PlayStation 3 at the time, and so it hasn't been exactly forgotten, but it's never been in the forefront of my mind until I went to a convention and I was perusing the used games like I always do, and I happened to stumble across this game for $15. I was able to talk him down to $10, and so I could finally experience Heavenly Sword the way that I had wanted to more than a decade ago at this point. Now, was it worth the wait? Not necessarily. I'm sure, like, at the time, it was a really good game, and the graphics certainly do hold up to a point. As far as gameplay goes, I would describe it as God of War-esque. The old God of War, not the new one. It's a hack and slash game. There's some strategy involved here. But really how the story goes is there is this tribe that our main character belongs to called Nariko, and this tribe is tasked with protecting this Heavenly Sword, and the idea is any user who uses the Heavenly Sword will be granted immense power, but eventually their life force will be drained from the Heavenly Sword and they will die. There is this evil dictator guy who wants the Heavenly Sword for himself, and so Nariko is forced to use the Heavenly Sword herself to protect the Heavenly Sword and her tribe from this guy. As far as the antagonists in this game, they are rather interesting. The main antagonist, it is kind of hard to take him seriously just because they're trying to do that like cruel dictator humor. I'm above all this. This is all just very amusing to me. Another relic of its time is the big bad has like his 3 or 4 unique henchmen, and his henchmen are also very interesting to say the least. Like, they all have their own unique characteristics. Like, you got the snake lady, and you got like the big deformed guy who kind of goes into a shell like an armadillo, and then you have this like weird praying mantis teleporter guy whose blades are like a wing and they shake. Like, it's weird. And as you're playing through the game, you battle all his henchmen as you are working your way up to the big baddie. Nariko herself is very, very serious, and there are some definite 300 vibes here where she has like her overall narrative, like, oh, I never chose to have the Heavenly Sword, but I must pick it up in order to take down our enemy. And meanwhile, in the background, there's the vocalizing, the as she's going around and taking down armies of guys. So yeah, I was definitely like inspired by the movie 300, which makes sense given the time that this game came out. Nariko also has a sister, I don't think blood sister, but sister in terms of like that close bond, and she has like her own vibe. She's very much like acrobatic, and she always utilizes a crossbow, and so there will be sections when you're also playing as her sister Kai. But let's just talk about like the main combat here, because I think the combat is where this game really stands out, because the Heavenly Sword has 3 different stances. You got your quick attack, which is basically like the Heavenly Sword splits into 2 daggers, and you can go around and do these quick little combos. You have your ranged attack, which is very much like the old God of War, where these blades are attached by chains, and so you're like swinging them around. And then you have your strong attack, where it's just like one big giant great sword and you do these heavy deliberate strikes. And the cool thing about this is like your stances are controlled by the shoulder buttons rather than like a stance that you have to manually go in and choose. And so it's very easy and fluid to swap between these 3 different stances mid combo depending on like the scenario that you're in. So your quick basic attacks are probably going to get deflected deflected or blocked most of the time unless you are able to dodge an enemy attack and retaliate really quickly. There are definitely like a lot of hack and slash elements involved here. I typically did not use this quick stance just because like most of my attacks will get deflected. That's when I swapped over to the strong stance because I knew a couple combos off the top of my head that could break enemies' stances, and the strong stance was really good at breaking the enemy's blocks in order to break down their defenses. And then the ranged attack was typically just if you are surrounded by a bunch of weak enemies because you're just swirling your blades around, and probably these are going to get deflected as well. There are moments where you're like obviously meant to use your ranged stance and just swirl the blades around and take down these enemies. Typically, the main way that this stance would take down enemies is if you're like on a bridge or something like that and you're using the ranged stance and it like blows enemies off the ledge. Now, each of these stances have their own unique combos that you can execute. Some of these combos can take down enemy stances, and as you are playing through the game, you can unlock new different combos, which I think is a cool thing. It's something to work towards. Basically, like every single checkpoint that you are working through has these 3 medallions that you're trying to like build up based on, this is basically like your score on how well you did combat, and it's really affected on how high of a combo you can get without taking any damage. And so it's really important, especially if you're trying to 100% complete this game, to rack up those super high combos, avoid enemy attacks, and block enemy attacks. So you do have like a dodge roll that you can do to kind of like roll away. Now you are kind of committed to your attacks, but if you're using like a really quick stance, then you are able to roll pretty quickly. The strong stances, though, you are pretty committed to your strikes. Now, if you are just standing still, you're not doing any kind of attack or anything like that, you will block an enemy strike, and then that gives you a quick window in order to retaliate with a counter. There are like 2 different enemy attacks, though. So there's like a quick enemy attack and a heavy enemy attack, and so if an enemy is attacking you with a quick attack, they'll kind of like emit this blue aura, and so as long as you're in your quick stance, you're going to block and you can deflect that. If they're attacking you with like a strong attack, they're going to emit an orange aura where you'll have to be in your strong stance in order to block and retaliate that. So this was particularly interesting when you are facing off against like a boss and you have to like quickly decide what stance you want to block their attack with. Really though, like it was so much easier for me to just kind of like dodge roll away from enemy attacks and retaliate that way rather than trying to counterattack, but it is satisfying doing that counterattack. Now, as you are battling through the enemies, you will charge up a certain meter, and this allows you to just like automatically kill an enemy. So typically these big beefy guys that are going to be blocking all of your attacks, that's when I would execute these special attacks. Most of these special attacks revolve around unique ways of pulverizing these guys' groins. I think like there's one special attack where you like toss an enemy up and then you throw him down on his head and then you like just land right in between his legs, and it does like the shockwave that defeats all the enemies around him. It's a violent game. I wouldn't say it's bloody. Like I can't think of a lot of blood being in this game, but there's certainly a lot of violence. It's not on God of War level though. Now, I did mention that you can also play as Naruko's sister, Kai, and Kai uses a crossbow, and so typically you're going to be aiming kind of like a third-person shooter style, but whenever you have a projectile like a crossbow, or like you pick up a sword as Naruko and throw it at an enemy, you have this ability to kind of like follow the projectile and like kind of manipulate the way that it leans in order to like try and aim towards an enemy. And the game by default wants you to use the gyro in the PlayStation 3 controller because we loved motion controls at the time, or at least developers loved motion controls at the time. This was when the Wii was in its heyday. And so trying to manipulate my projectiles with the gyro on the controller, it was an absolute nightmare and did not work. And so I went through the settings, and yes, luckily there is an option to turn off the motion control, and then you're able to manipulate the projectiles with the joystick, which is so much easier than trying to use the gyro. And suddenly, like, projectiles and playing as Kai using this crossbow became so easy. There's also a decent amount of quick time events where if Naruko's doing something cool, running up a wall and taking down enemies, or in the middle of like a boss fight where you'll have to like press the correct button or move the joystick stick in the correct direction. I wasn't that good at this though, because they aren't very generous with how much reaction time you have to press the button, so I would mess up occasionally. It is kind of funny though if you mess up, because it's building up to this epic moment, and then to have like Naruko epically fail and crash into a wall or something like that is entertaining. And they are fairly generous, I would say, with the checkpoints, and so it's not like that devastating if you do die. Only in certain cases with like bosses where you have to start the boss fight over again were pretty frustrating, but that usually did not happen. There are also like puzzles that are scattered throughout certain levels, but they're not like that tricky of puzzles. Typically it's like, hey, try to throw an item at this gong in order to open up the door, or like ricochet it to hit a gong, or hey, try to hurry and open this door and like run through the door before it closes. Just simple little things like that. As far as like other things that you're going to be looking for while playing through the level, I mentioned these 3 medals that you try to earn in every checkpoint, and there are these like urns that are scattered. There's only a couple in each checkpoint, but these, I believe they heal you, but they also fill up that meter to try and earn more of these medals. But yeah, it is kind of cool to have these medals because you're working towards unlocking new combos, but you can also unlock new bonus features like little animations or images. I gotta be honest though, I'm not really like the type of person that will scroll through these, but it's just nice feeling like I'm unlocking something, like I'm doing something. It's a rather short game. I want to say it took me maybe like 5 or 6 hours total if I was to guess, which I could see that being rather frustrating if this was like a full price game. But for $10, I think I got my money's worth. I definitely enjoyed my time. And it does kind of open itself up for like trying to get better scores, trying to unlock all the medals. You also unlock like hell mode if you play through the game with normal mode, if you're all about the combat. And I did like the combat. The combat did have a good little level of depth and mastery. I wasn't crazy about enemies just constantly blocking all of my attacks, but that did lead me to try to have a little more strategy than just trying to brainlessly slash through enemies like this is a Musou game. I think if I was exposed to this game when it was first introduced to me through those TV commercials, I think I would have been like all about this game, and I would have held this game in a lot higher regard for having been too exposed to it at an age when I thought that this stuff was just so epic. But I mean, there are aspects that haven't aged that well. For instance, like her hair, they really wanted her hair to be really long. It's red, it's flying all over the place, but actually like in game, her hair just has a mind of its own where it's just like flying all over the place. It almost looks like she's Medusa and her hairs are like all these little snakes that are like flying around her. And sometimes like her hair will get like caught on her shoulder and it just like looks weird. And so the hair physics of that time definitely needed some work, but I'm willing to like look past all of that stuff. I think I'm going to give this game a 3 out of 5, and I don't think that it's a game that should be overlooked, especially for hack and slash enthusiasts. I do think that it's able to carve its own identity rather than just being a God of War-esque game. Well guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Heavenly Sword, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!
Now we're coming to my favorite part. Narrator.